I want to talk briefly about. One is offset arrangements.
Mm-hmm.
Offsets is where a government gives a contract. Let's say I'm a government, or you're the government. Let's use you're the government. You give me a contract, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you say, I want you to build a rail line, and I tell you, well, great, I'm having to build a rail line, but it's $500 million. And you said, okay, I'll pay $500 million, but $100 million of that, which is 25% of the contract value. And then the range can vary, because most African countries don't have the bargaining power. So you can start out saying, okay, I want you to use $50 million of that $500 million. I want you to use that to attract investment to my country, or to our countries, if there are 3 or more countries involved in this arrangement. Which means I have to now go to my contacts, wherever I am, in Poland, in Britain, in America. I have to go to my contacts and say, listen, I'm doing a great deal in West Africa, in East Africa, and it's a $500 million project. I need to bring in $50 million in real tangible investments. Okay, so we need machine shops that will, machine parts for this rail system that I'm getting ready. So you are the company that supplies me machine products. Would you be so kind to consider merging or partnering with a company in East Africa or South Africa, West, to produce these parts so that they don't have to import the parts after we're done? Okay, that's an offset. So what we've proposed, we've set it up where African governments, we've at least analyzed where African governments can think in terms of every time I give a contract, I want something back in return. You can do it for domestic manufacturers. So if a domestic company gets a contract to build roads or to supply something, well, 10% of whatever the contract value is should be used to create an investment in an area of priority to the government. So this offset arrangement is not only good for external supplies, meaning from overseas suppliers,
right.
It's also good for domestic supplies as well. It's just a means, it's a smart way of stretching your dollars. And this is important, one of the problems in Africa is the fact that Africans are more likely to trade with their colonial governments, there's more trade between African countries and the world than within African countries.
Okay.
That's been a huge problem for a long time. Part of it is infrastructure, because you don't have, easy access to these countries. The roads are bad. The custom unions are not well coordinated, and they're not integrated. You have the issue of currency, which is the biggest issue. So a person in Egypt wants to import goods from Morocco, they have to pay in either dollars or euros most of the time.
Yes.
Okay, which makes absolutely no sense. So what we're suggesting is use another technique of compensatory trade, which is called evidence accounts trade.
Okay.
In evidence accounts trade, no money exchanges hands, just goods. So the Egyptian company wants to sell hats or whatever to the Moroccan company. What the Moroccan company then does is the Moroccan company contracts and pays in local currency to its government. And the government now keeps record of this amount that was paid. The Egyptian company does the same thing. Basically sells the goods through the agencies set up by the Egyptian government to manage evidence accounts, right? So now the goods go to Morocco and the Egyptian company gets Egyptian currency. The Moroccan company pays the Moroccan government in local currency for the goods. So far, no dollars. So what has happened is now Morocco owes Egypt the value of that exchange, and that value can be denominated in any currency,
Okay.
just so you can keep accounts.
Right.
But they owe, so there's a credit to Egypt and there's a debit to Morocco. So now if Morocco has crude oil, so Egypt says, okay, great, you sell that debit amount in crude oil to XYZ company in Egypt, and we're clear. XYZ company is going to pay us in hard currency or in local currency for the crude oil that you sold to them. So now it's a wash. The accounts are balanced. An evidence account is something that you can do for an extended period of time. You balance the accounts periodically, not per each transaction. So you could do this for a year, and at the end of the year, somebody comes in and says, okay, Morocco owes Egypt $100 million in evidence accounts credits. Egypt owes Kenya, 30 million. Somebody balances all of that through other transactions. And those other transactions have to be transactions that are recorded within that same period, or the credit carries over into the next period.
Okay.
So it's an accounting mechanism, but what it does is, no, you don't have to, in Africa, certainly within African regions, nobody is anymore hampered by the need to go and find US dollars or euros in order for a trade to happen between Morocco and Egypt, between Egypt and Kenya, between Nigeria and Liberia, like Nigeria and Ivory Coast. Trade happens in an evidence account system, all of which is tracked by a manager. An African Trade Group will be proposing that African governments, or at least suggesting that African governments look at that as a means of unlocking and having greater trade within African regions.
And that's not limited to perishable and non-perishable.
No, it's unlimited
So
trade.
you're saying that some countries that have a great agricultural capability are able then to trade for items that they don't have.
Absolutely. In fact, that is precisely what this thing, the evidence account helps. So it helps countries that are, because obviously over time you want everybody to be strong in as much as they can be strong in, right? But in the meantime, you start somewhere. So if a country is a major agricultural producer, certainly their agricultural surplus can become, for them, instead of going to waste, a source of revenue if they can convey those products to areas or other countries that are in greater need for them. And then in those countries, maybe that country that received the agricultural products, maybe they are really good in manufacturing clothes or shoes. Or maybe they are really good, they have an excess amount of energy supplies. They can then trade the energy supplies for the agriculture.
And you're not limiting this primarily to the African continent. You're saying that it can be done throughout the markets. You could attract, say, a European partner to an African country.
Yeah, the challenge in the case somebody has to be willing to deal in non-cash transactions. Okay, so that's the key. Most Western suppliers want, they want cash on the barrelhead. However, countries like China, they're more willing to do these deals. In fact, a lot of their projects in Africa are barter deals, where they are providing rail lines, providing roads, providing schools and technology and hospitals, and in return for commodities that they can take and use in their country. So it's a barter deal. There was a major barter deal between China and DR Congo a few years back that caused a lot of problems in DR Congo because the West became very unhappy with China getting that much business in DR Congo, or certain principles in the West became very unhappy. I should paint the entire West with a broad stroke. But the deal was basically $10 billion in various infrastructure development projects, schools, hospitals, and so on and so forth. And in return, China was going to take copper and so on and so forth, to cover for that. So evidence accounts has been going on for a very long time. Right. Part of South Korea's development was through evidence accounts with Japan, but that's another subject for conversation. So there is a tremendous link from my old. I'm hoping that as we are selling this book, or people are getting to know about Unleashed, interest also perks up for compensatory trade strategy.